Here we are again. Today I'm going to talk to you about commas. I know most people kind of cringe. They don't know how to use them. They don't know where they go. They either don't use enough or use too many or use them in the wrong spots. But the big deal with commas is it's pointing out the structure of your sentence for your reader. When we're talking, we can give the emphasis where we want it. We can ask a question. We do that little up at the end, and it's not a big deal. Um, when we're writing, though, we have to be careful to make sure that our reader gets the same structure that we intend, and that's why we use commas where we do. Now, you have in your um, file folder here um, the same handout that I'm going to walk through. This is one of those times when I am going to kind of read to you, so I'm really sorry, but I have to say things out loud so that you have them. But there are two different ways to look at commas. The do rules, here's where you put them, and the don't rules, here's where you don't. And they're not diametrically opposed all the time. So I'm going to walk through the do rules, and then I'm going to give you a kind of quick and dirty on the don'ts. And the don'ts are on there because that's where a lot of people put commas and they really shouldn't. So if you haven't printed this out or you don't have it up on another screen, pause me, go do that. Again, the commas help readers see the necessity of separation between ideas within the sentence. Okay. First comma rule is basically if you have two sentences joined with a conjunction, and, but, or, nor, for, yet, make sure that you put a comma there. The and is not enough to join two sentences. Now, an and can join two phrases or 5 things in a list or whatever, but to join two whole sentences together, not enough oomph there. Okay, so give it a comma. Second rule: use commas after introductory clauses, phrases, or words that come before the main clause. If your sentence starts with because, or if, or after, or although, or an ing verb, having, you're going to need a comma at the end of that particular clause or phrase, and then the rest of the sentence will go on its own. Because her alarm was broken, comma, she was late for class. Now, if we flip that, she was late for class because her alarm was broken, we don't need a comma. Okay, that's one of those don't rules, but the do rules, okay? Common starter words are there, some things that were going on. Make sure that you're putting the comma at the end of the clause, not after that signal word as well. We use a pair of commas when we have that kind of a sentence, that kind of a phrase in the middle of a sentence. If you can leave out the clause or phrase or word and still have the sentence make the same sense, then you probably need commas around it. There are things that we talk about here, essential versus non-essential. Okay, if it's not essential, okay, we call that a parenthetical, then it can have commas around it. If you take it out and the sentence falls apart, then you need to keep it. Okay, no commas. And my silly little examples here. An essential clause, something like this: apples that are green are usually called Granny Smith apples. Okay, now if you get rid of that are green, you don't have the same sense, right? Apples, excuse me, are usually called Granny Smith apples. Well, only the Granny Smith ones, right? Only the green ones. An unessential clause: apples, comma, which are my favorite fruit, comma, are usually harvested in autumn. Apples are usually harvested in autumn. That's the meaning of the sentence. I just happen to put in there that they're my favorite fruit. Okay, so parenthetical, an aside kind of thing. Rule number 4 is the written in a series. Okay, so if you have 3 or more, okay, whether you're talking about things there or not. Sarah earned A's in calculus, physics, and English last term. The candidate promised to lower taxes, solve the education crisis, and end unemployment. You need to have that comma before the and I know you've heard otherwise. We call it an Oxford comma, and that's fine too. But you need that unless your last two elements are more closely related than the rest of the pieces. And that's not usually the case. Okay, so use your commas. Um, Number 5 is kind of weird. We don't use it very often. Um, Use commas to separate two or more coordinate adjectives that describe the same noun. Okay, so can you add an and between the adjectives? Can you flip them? If you can do that, then you need to put a comma there. A white frame house, a purple wool shawl, an easy happy smile. Okay, you can't say a frame white house, so you don't need a comma there. You could say a stubborn greedy child, and so you do need a comma there. Okay, so 6, when you get to the end of a sentence and you change your mind, basically, sharply contrasted coordinate elements. He was merely ignorant, not stupid. You need that comma there because they're telling you the flip, basically. You're one of the senator's top aides, aren't you? Okay, a little doubt. And then there's the number 7. This is what we do things with geographical names, items and dates, addresses, and titles and names. There's a whole set there. Birmingham, comma, Alabama gets its name from Birmingham, comma, England. If you, and this is harder to parse these days, we don't write a lot of letters and put them in envelopes, but if you would, and you would put the next thing on a next line, then you need a comma. So you have your street address, okay, and then on the next line you would have your city, state, zip, right? So if you write it out, like who lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, comma, Washington, comma, DC. Okay. Titles and names, things like PhD, junior, senior. Okay. If you're going in 1, 2, 3, you don't have to put a comma, but juniors and seniors do. Use commas to set up direct quotations in dialogue. Okay. There's 2 examples there. One with the first phrase, one with the phrase in the middle. It has the same issue if you put the phrase at the end. And then there's number 9. Use a comma anywhere in the sentence to prevent possible confusion or misreading. So the one here, it starts with a to. To Jonathan, comma, Christopher had been sort of a mentor. Okay. Now, if you just started reading that sentence and you go on, you have to kind of back up and try again. To Jonathan Christopher. Wait, is what? Anyway, comma, that's the kind of miscellaneous. If you need a comma to help your reader better understand or correctly understand what you're doing, then put a comma there. Okay? Just don't go overboard with those. They don't happen very often. Okay, the don't rules. There are 3, okay, and they kind of blend in from other things. Don't separate a subject from its verb. Okay, the Polymer Science Building is now considered a landmark. Don't put a comma before the is. We tend to think about commas when we breathe, okay, and that's a good spot usually, but sometimes it gives us a little bit of a mess here. Just, don't separate the subject from the verb with a comma. That doesn't work very well. Okay, don't put a comma between 2 verbs. Number 2 is something that I struggle with because I want there to be a spot there. I want there to be a break there. But we laid out our music and snacks and began to study. You don't need a comma there. Now, if you have, we laid out our music and snacks and we began to study, then you need a comma, but not there. Okay. Don't put a comma before a dependent or subordinate clause when it comes after the main clause, except in extreme contrast. Even though and although, get a comma regardless of where you put them. Okay. So, not so horrible. Make sure that you keep these handouts. They are um, very useful. I still use mine. I've been teaching writing for 25 years, and I still occasionally go, wait, where did I put that? Anyway, hang on to those. Everybody has to look things up. And that's not just about MLA or APA, that's commas too. So you'll have some exercises to do and some work to do with the comma rules. So keep hold of those and use the same rule numbers all the time. Okay? Again, if you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me.